For all the realism that G.I. Joe provides, especially on the comic book side with Larry Hama, sometimes the stories and characters take a turn into the more exotic, more futuristic, more science fiction. Today we're jumping into that side of the G.I. Joe world and talking all about sci-fi. Let's go! Thanks for watching JLS Comics. If you do like the video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. I upload videos just like this every week. Alright, let's jump into our story. Seymour Fine was born in Geraldine, Montana, and growing up it was apparent that Seymour was a precocious and intelligent kid. He was fascinated with electronics and things like mechanical and electrical engineering. Eventually, Seymour enrolled in a master's degree program to earn a master's in electronic engineering. But Seymour became completely sidetracked by his interest in electronics and now also high-tech laser optics that he had to take a leave of absence from the master's degree program. This is when he joined the United States Army, where he was doing R&D work on laser weapon systems, direct energy weapons, HPMs, and building tactical high-energy lasers, active denial systems, and how to apply laser weaponry to the U.S. Army's JLTVs, helicopters, and next-gen combat vehicles. After this, Seymour went back to finish school. In fact, his thesis for his master's degree was a defensive security system that was so effective it ended up with DoD for field testing. And he also created a remote targeting sensor array for a laser system that was adopted by NASA. These space-based weapons led him to becoming an astronaut and has, as the Star Brigade file card says, left Earth more times than he can remember. These special applications put him on the radar of an elite task force known as G.I. Joe, and so Seymour was recruited to the G.I. Joe team. According to Mark Bellomo's Ultimate Guide to G.I. Joe, working pre-production names for him included names like Red Light and Hotspot. But Larry Hama stepped in and said that Hotline, who would later be called Dial Tone, with a name like that meant that Hotspot should be called Sci-Fi instead to avoid any confusion with the name similarity. So they ultimately landed on the codename Sci-Fi for him. Sci-Fi does have a couple meanings. It, of course, refers to his advanced, futuristic, future warfare focus, but the codename is also a loose phonetic portmanteau of his government name. Sci is for the S-E-Y part of Seymour, and Phi is the first two letters of his last name. I guess you could say he was born for this. As his file card says, he takes everything real easy, and he's never in a hurry to get anywhere or do anything, but that's what it takes to be a laser rifleman. At a range of 2.5 miles, the impact spot of laser light will jump 100 feet for every 1,000th of an inch movement at the source. That spot has got to be held on target long enough to burn through that source. Otherwise, it's no more harmful than a warm breeze. So Sci-Fi debuted with the G.I. Joe team in Marvel Comics in Larry Hama's 64th issue of the G.I. Joe A Real American Hero comic book series. But this was just a tiny cameo, as he showed up to a party with his helmet on, visor down, ready to pound some Yojo Colas. His first mission came with the next issue, issue 65. The U.S. Air Force was installing an upgrade module to a satellite which would be able to detect what Cobra was doing with their terror drones. So Cobra had launched their own shuttle from Cobra Island, led by Cobra Commander Fred and the Baroness. In response to this, G.I. Joe launched the USS Defiant from their hidden launch pad at the pit in Utah. Sci-Fi was manning the tactical station, and as soon as they were in orbit, Sci-Fi armed their laser weapons. On the Cobra ship, it was Scrap Iron who fired space missiles at the Joes, so it was a Sci-Fi versus Scrap Iron space battle for the opening salvos. Sci-Fi, though, was tasked with lining up and firing his laser at the massive claw that Cobra deployed from their cargo bay to grab the USAF satellite. He lined up for his shot and fired, severing the robotic arm as Scrap Iron fired another salvo of missiles at the Joes. Sci-Fi fired his second laser, and it was a direct hit on Cobra's cockpit, which knocked her ship aside and caused Baroness to smash her head on a console, knocking her out immediately. The Joes pulled the Air Force astronaut into their ship as Sci-Fi fired again at the Cobra ship, knocking it violently off its course. Then the two spaceships turned toward each other. The Joes were losing hull integrity, nav and tracking computers were down. Meanwhile, Cobra's ship was losing pressure fast, with their major systems at 80% and dropping. Techno Viper, though, had enough power left to feed Scrap Iron a firing solution, so Cobra fired, but it ended up destroying the satellites nearby instead of the Joes, delaying their finding out about Cobra's global terror drone operations. But the Joes were able to rescue the U.S. Air Force astronauts. During Cobra's Civil War, Sci-Fi was on the weapons team, led by Hawk, along with Leatherneck, Roadblock, Fast Draw, Lowlight, Breaker, and Doc. After getting trapped on the runway, Sci-Fi and the weapons team formed up with Serpentor's His Tank column, while Cobra Commander's forces advanced from the west end of the runway. And in the aftermath of that conflict, Sci-Fi stood on the beach as Zorana and Lady J were pulled apart. Later, two teens named Roxy and Tiffany were out in the Utah desert at night looking for UFOs and aliens. They stumbled across the pit as the Joes were doing night maneuvers. Sci-Fi was one of the Joes who walked down the rear ramp of Wild Bill's C-130 like a scene from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and the girls thought Sci-Fi was an alien. Guess it's that crazy helmet he likes to wear. Then Clutch and Rock and Roll were activated as Cobra's sleeper agents by Zarana and captured Tiffany and Roxy as hostages in the armory. Sci-Fi and the Joes couldn't shoot their way in, so Sci-Fi melted the lock with his laser rifle. And inside they found the two terrified girls and the brainwashed Joes, but they were passed out. Crisis averted. Much later, Clutch rolled through the front gate of the pit driving a military M1078 style utility truck with a top secret load. The password to get down to the pit was the name Bobby Heinlein, a famous science fiction author on the same level as Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke, which was very appropriate as that top secret load turned out to be Star Brigade. Star Brigade was Sci-Fi, Roadblock, Payload, Space Shot, and Duke. That night, Hardtop rode the USS Defiant out on the crawler for launch. And in space, the team linked up with a Russian shuttle, and the two spaceships coupled together nose to nose. In a plot right out of the 1998 movie Armageddon, they teamed up with Red Star and the October Guard to deal with a 15-mile-long, 23.6-mile-wide asteroid on a direct course for a deep impact on Earth. It turns out that a Russian scientist, as part of a covert operation called Operation Dropforge, had dropped drones onto asteroids to turn them into kinetic bombardment projectiles. Sci-Fi watched as Dinah stripped out of her spacesuit into her fatigues. When she pulled out her rifle, he said, "Sniper, that's my job." And so Dinah said, "You don't worry, Mr. American Laser Sniper. There's going to be plenty of work for both of us." And as they sat down on the surface of the asteroid, an army of construction drones attacked. Sci-Fi and Dinah sat up on the edge of a crater taking out drones from their overwatch position. But the Defiant was destroyed and the Russian ship badly damaged, so they decided to make a final charge on the asteroid's command center. They realized they were the only way to save Earth, so they had to do it despite the odds. On the way there, they ran into a giant articulated bulldozer drone, and both Roadblock and Lieutenant Gorky tried to take it out, but it was Sci-Fi and Dinah who were able to shoot out its computer command center modules to shut it down so that Space Shot could finish it off with his armor bot. But the drones were overwhelming them with sheer numbers, and the team's position was nearly overrun when the call came in that the drones were reacting to weapons. So the team put their weapons down and walked right past the robots, right into the command center. They hit the self-destruct and made it off the asteroid with a repaired Russian shuttle just in time. Sci-Fi and the team saved planet Earth. Sci-Fi was also part of some European missions. In fact, he made the cover of European Missions Issue 1. He was in the first story as the team saved an ambassador from Cobra Sieges. Sci-Fi had set up with his laser rifle 2 miles away. Sci-Fi came back to Action Force's secret base underneath London after the operation, where he discovered a transmitter anchored in the lining of one of the guards' backpacks. Lady J said their security was breached, and she put Sci-Fi on first shift of security detail in security control. Footloose was back from his mission, and LJ had Sci-Fi let him back in at exit 4. But he had been captured by the Crimson Twins, and Sci-Fi just let them in along with at least a dozen battle android troopers. But since Sci-Fi had found out about the transmitter, they expected this, and inside the gate, Sci-Fi activated a laser net which ripped the bats apart, allowing Roadblock and Flint to take out the rest. A bat almost took out Leatherneck, but Sci-Fi showed up in the hallway to shoot it dead. He also showed up on the cover of issue 4, this time riding atop a whale out to sea. They were escorting a massive tanker called Pegasus Star through the treacherous Straits of Hormuz, and so Sci-Fi was on the whale shooting mines with his laser rifle. They figured that Cobra was dropping mines in the water from a Rattler. Sci-Fi kept shooting the mines, and he stood down a Rattler that was bearing down on the whale, and Sci-Fi shot and destroyed the ATG attack plane with his laser rifle. One shot, one kill. He was also in Amsterdam for Operation Watchstar after CoverGirl and her Diamond were captured by Weaponsmith and Copperhead. They tracked her tracer to a windmill, and it was Flint and Sci-Fi who breached the front door. Weaponsmith had developed a powerful laser weapon fueled by diamonds, and he wanted the Watchstar diamond to power his laser. CoverGirl, though, took him out with his own weapon at the end. Sci-Fi was also on the cover of issue 10 along with Snake Eyes and Beachhead. In this story, Cobra Bats had a truck bomb parked in the middle of London Bridge. Sci-Fi was called in from Germany for this mission, and he was so important that Ace flew him in personally in a Sky Striker. Ace and Sci-Fi had started bickering, and Ace said, "Even you must feel the pressure on this one, right?" But as he looked back to the Wizzo seat, he saw that the laser rifleman was already asleep. He was calm. They landed at Farnsborough, and then Wild Bill heloed Sci-Fi in with a Dragonfly with 15 minutes left on the bomb's timer. Sci-Fi stayed silent. He needed to be calm and cool. He needed steady fingers. He needed to be a rock for his steady laser beam, or else it'd miss and they'd lose London Bridge. So Sci-Fi fast roped onto the roof of a nearby church, and with less than a minute left on the detonator, he started to burn through a bomb cable, but then a bat got in his line of fire. Hawk started panicking and yelling over the radio, but Sci-Fi calmly clicked the radio off and fired again. The bats exploded and not the van, so Sci-Fi saved London Bridge. Later, Hawk actually apologized to him. During Larry Hama's ARAH run with IDW Publishing, Sci-Fi spends most of his time in the pit helping bring their array of advanced weapons to bear on Cobra the enemy. He's also one of the guys who helps out General Colton, Jane, and Mainframe with their SDI laser system. Sci-Fi made his long-awaited return to the field during the recent Snake Hunt event. There he was on the first bus to Springfield for the Sean Collins Throwdown rescue mission. In Josh Blaylock in Devil's Due's G.I. Joe, Sci-Fi was one of the troops to fight back against Serpentor and his cult called the Coil. Sci-Fi was part of Insertion Team 1 with Mercer, Mainframe, Flash, Hacker, and Jinx, tasked with penetrating Cobra Island and disabling enemy defense and offensive configurations, especially any EMP weaponry. Afterward, they were to rendezvous with Assault Team Alpha. Sci-Fi was teamed with Hacker to access the control room while Jinx and Mercer attacked the EMP cannon tower and Flash and Mainframe took out their own objective. They all placed their respective charges. Then Jinx and Sci-Fi egressed into the jungle outside while the rest held off the enemy, which is when Flash and Mainframe died. Voiced by Jerry Hauser, Sci-Fi first appeared in the opening of Sunbow's Season 2 of the G.I. Joe animated series with Part 1 of the 5-part Arise Serpentor, Arise event. He's riding on Sergeant Slaughter's Triple T fenders with Quick Kick. In Cobrathon, Sci-Fi jumped out of the front of a Havoc to raid a Hacker installation along with Duke, Beachhead, Mainframe, and Lifeline. Sci-Fi said, "Hacker, huh? I knew a family named Hacker once." And then he was asked if he had read the intelligence report, and he said, "I don't read intelligence reports, they get me all riled up." Inside, when Lifeline fell in a piranha pit, Sci-Fi tried to pull him out with his laser rifle, but Lifeline wouldn't touch the weapon. So Sci-Fi chastised him and then pulled him up with his arm, but then they were captured and forced to participate in the Cobrathon Telethon. Cobra threw the two Joes on a giant roulette wheel, spinning for their fates. Sci-Fi tried to escape, which angered the Baroness, and Sci-Fi laughed and she said, "Laugh while you can, G.I. Joke." They then stuck Sci-Fi in a jar and filled it up with coins as a slot machine hit a jackpot, while Lifeline was tortured with craps. Not like that, the actual game called craps. The Joes found them, broke in, and rescued their two teammates, and Dialtone pulled Sci-Fi out of the coins, while Cobra escaped on fangs. In gray hairs and growing pains, Sci-Fi met up with the team, landing dramatically on a pier with a Falcon glider. The team had to investigate a spa, and Sci-Fi went to interview Donna Dasher, one of the celebrities from the spa commercials. But then he was almost stampeded by a herd of elephants, so he climbed up a tower to escape their feet, and the elephants smashed the tower and he fell, and the mission was proving to be more perilous than a combat operation. And so he fell, but he fell face first into a truck loaded with hay and other movie props, so he was okay. He then grabbed some flash grenades and jumped into a jeep to help stop the stampeding herd of elephants. And then later, at the ageless spa, Sci-Fi was one of the Joes turned into an old man for a short amount of time. In My Brother's Keeper, we get to see Sci-Fi hanging out in his room with his space art while watching Transformers on a small cathode ray television. Sergeant Slaughter told them that the two of them were going to go to the World Science Fiction Convention. As they walked in, Sergeant Slaughter goes, "Sci-Fi, this is stupid." And then he says, "Unbelievable, and I thought you were weird." Sci-Fi was still with Sergeant Slaughter for Ninja Holiday, along with Leatherneck, Beachhead, and Wetsuit. He later had to fight ninjas as they went after Pierre Lafont. In Nightmare Assault, he was flying a Conquest and died in an assault on a Cobra stronghold, but this turned out to be a nightmare Hawk had, as he was being affected by Dr. Mindbender's nightmare machine. In the same episode, we also saw him piloting a Tomahawk. Speaking of vehicles, he also jumped out of a LCV recon sled during Secondhand Emotions. They were conducting live fire exercises on base when the Dreadnoks attacked. Sci-Fi and the Joes chased them away, but the Dreadnoks were able to plant receivers on the Joes that Dr. Mindbender was able to use to alter their moods by playing with his organ. He wanted to overcome them with waves of fear, anger, jealousy, and hysteria. Dr. Mindbender immobilized Hawk, Scarlet, and Sci-Fi on their recon sleds, and they were stuck on the train tracks as a trolley train thing bore down on them. The Joes on the train were able to stop it inches from Sci-Fi. Back at base, the Dreadnoks attacked again and again. Sci-Fi, Hawk, and Scarlet paired up to repel the attack. He also pulled Iceberg out from under a jeep during the firefight. But Mindbender's mood altering made them laugh hysterically, so Zartane and Zarana chopped their necks and knocked them out. In another battle, Sci-Fi and the team almost gave in to their false fear, but the strength of their conviction overcame it, and when Serpentor saw this, he was angry and pimp-slapped Mindbender and then destroyed his organ with his fists. And when he did that, the receivers on the Joe's necks burned out and they were destroyed. In the Into Your Tent episode, episode, Sci-Fi was in the mess hall asking if anyone had seen his calculator. And then he ate with Lowlight. And then still with Lowlight later in the episode, he participated in the rescue mission in the underground cave at the end of the episode. Cobra had slaves working the mines to mine gold, which was meant to fund the Coil, Cobra's new secret society. Sci-Fi also appeared in G.I. Joe the movie, but really didn't say anything as he was too busy driving an Ostriker. Sci-Fi's version 1 action figure was released in 1986 with his iconic, easily recognizable, completely science fiction, and not stealthy at all, neon green uniform. He came with his bright green backpack, a laser rifle, as any Sci-Fi figure should. It was, as Hasbro figure designer Ron Rudat said in an interview, a desire by Kurt Bozigian to capitalize on the fluorescent and day-glow color trend of the time. That said, he wouldn't bear this trademark green for 25 more years. In 1991, Sci-Fi donned a gray, black, and yellow uniform and changed his specialty from V1's laser trooper to now being a directed energy expert. And he now came with a silvery gray backpack along with a missile launcher and a gun in the same colorway. 1993 Sci-Fi still played into the science fiction gimmick of his name, but went in another direction. This version of Sci-Fi was part of Star Brigade, and he was now skilled as the Starfighter pilot. The Starfighter was a repainted Cobra stiletto, basically. 1994 Sci-Fi was still a Star Brigade, but broadened his range of spaceborne vehicles as he was now not only the Starfighter pilot, but was now the Star Brigade pilot. Then in 2011, many years later, Sci-Fi went back to his neon lime green gear. This version of him was part of the 30th anniversary line, and he was now called the Elite Combat Trooper. I guess he came back to Earth. Where will he show up next? Who knows, but we'll be there to talk about it shortly. That's a wrap on this, my friends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and you'll be one of the first to know when I upload videos just like this each and every week. I'm Jesse, this is JLS Comics, and I'll see you soon.